Can water that's simply cold, not deep, not rough, stop your heart before you've swallowed a single mouthful? It can, and it can happen in under a minute, with nothing to do with drowning. The heart can stop from the shock alone, lungs still completely dry. Drop into cold water and your body answers before you get a vote, mouth flies open, arms fling upward, breathing turns ragged in an instant. That reflex is not optional. Your body already carries a reflex built for going underwater, meant to slow the heart, save oxygen. Cold shock fires the opposite order. It guns the heart instead. Two commands hit your heart in the same instant. One says slow down, one says speed up. Which one do you think actually wins? Neither wins clean. In some people, the two signals collide and throw the heart into a chaotic rhythm called ventricular fibrillation. That's not the body overreacting. That's a wiring conflict, and it is brutal. Doctors put the timeline at seconds. Not minutes of struggling. Seconds. That is not the slow, sleepy hypothermia most people picture, numb fingers, slurred words, minutes ticking by. It's faster than that. It can be over before hypothermia even starts. So the real question was never whether cold water can stop a heart. It's why it stops some hearts and leaves others completely untouched. The easy guess is that this only happens to people who already have a weak heart, some defect nobody ever caught, just waiting for the right trigger. It's a satisfying story. Sudden death, no water in the lungs, a heart primed to fail, cold water simply pulls a trigger everyone assumes was already loaded. Except the bodies don't back that up. Doctors have examined people who died this way and found nothing wrong. No blocked artery. No thickened muscle. No old scar. A completely normal heart that simply stopped. Some of the people this has killed were young and fit. Swimmers. People who trained in cold water for years and knew exactly what they were doing. Do you assume that being in shape protects you from something like this? Most people do, and that's exactly the assumption this condition ignores. That's the part that should actually worry you. Fitness isn't the shield here. It never was. There's another condition doctors already know well, a perfectly healthy heart stopping cold, with no cold water anywhere near it. Cardiologists call it commotio cordis, and it shows up in baseball, hockey, even a shoulder in a scrum, one hit landing at exactly the wrong instant. Which is the same question cold water raises. If the heart itself is fine, something else decides who this happens to and who it walks away from. Skin touches cold water and your nervous system issues two commands in the same instant. One is ancient, the same reflex that lets a seal or a whale hold its breath far longer than you ever could. It tells your heart to slow down and conserve oxygen. The other says the opposite. Cold shock itself is a sympathetic surge. It hits on contact before you've taken a single breath, and it spikes your heart rate and blood pressure hard. That surge lands at the exact second the dive reflex is already pressing the brakes. You know that jolt when something startles you and your heart thuds once before settling back down? Picture that same surge landing on top of a nervous system that's simultaneously ordering the heart to slow. Neither signal backs off. Both hit the same target at once. Commotio cordis works because a single hit lands inside a narrow sliver of the heartbeat's electrical cycle, a moment thin enough that timing is almost everything. Cold shock may be doing something similar, not a physical blow, but two nerve signals landing in that same fragile instant. Put those two signals together and you don't get a heart attack. You get the heart's electrical rhythm scrambling into ventricular fibrillation, a quiver with no actual pump behind it. It's almost absurd once you sit with it. Two separate emergency systems, each one perfectly sound on its own, and stacking them in the wrong order can be the thing that kills you. None of this cares how many laps you can swim or how many hours you've logged in a pool. The dive reflex and the cold shock response both fire from the brainstem, underneath anything training or willpower can reach. What doctors still can't fully explain is why one heart absorbs that clash and rides it out, while the next one doesn't. That part isn't settled science. Nobody's pretending otherwise. Danger peaks in the first minute in the water, before any of this has a chance to settle into a rhythm. That's the gap where jumping in feet first matters more than swimming ability ever will. So yes, a jolt of cold water can stop a heart before drowning ever gets the chance to start. The gasp and the flailing arms you'd expect to see aren't the danger. What's happening underneath them is. It's why some open water deaths turn up no water in the lungs at all. The heart gave out before the drowning could even begin, cardiac, not respiratory, and over in seconds. That's why every cold water safety course fixates on the first minute. Get your breathing under control. Don't fight the gasp. Ride it out. It sounds like caution. It's actually the whole window you get. Long before anyone called it cold shock, physiologists were dunking volunteers into refrigerated tanks and watching heart monitors spike the moment skin hit the water. Decades of that unglamorous lab work built the danger curve every safety course now teaches. The gasp first, the rhythm chaos right behind it, a window where the two collide that closes almost as fast as it opens. Grim, careful science, and the reason anyone can say how little time you actually have. Not every pathologist buys this explanation for a given death. An arrhythmia and a plain drowning can leave nearly the same picture on the table: a stopped heart, lungs that look clear either way. So skeptics argue some of these are drownings mislabeled as cardiac, caught too late to tell the difference. The dispute isn't settled, and that gap is part of why nobody agrees on how common this actually is. Some of the people this catches hardest aren't beginners. Experienced open water swimmers and lifeguards turn up in these cases too, and it isn't random. Years of comfort in the water can mean skipping the slow wade-in that lets the body adjust. Jumping straight from dry air into cold water because you've done it 100 times before. Confidence removes the one habit that actually buys you time. Confidence is not immunity. Rescue services change their advice because of exactly this pattern. Instead of telling people to swim hard the moment they hit cold water, Coast Guard and lifeboat campaigns now say the opposite. Float on your back, let the first minute of gasping and thrashing pass, and only start swimming once your breathing settles. Fighting the water during that opening window is what turns a survivable dunk into a drowning. There's another wrinkle nobody expects. The water doesn't have to be brutally cold for this to trigger. Anything colder than the surrounding air can be enough to set off the reflex, which is why cases turn up in water most people would call merely cool, not Arctic. That single fact upends almost everyone's mental picture of when this is even a risk. Cold shock passes in under a minute, and that's supposed to be the hard part. It isn't. Blood pulls away from your arms and legs to protect your core, and within about 10 minutes your hands stop obeying you. Swimmers who survive the gasp have drowned anyway, unable to grip a rope or keep their own head above the surface. Rescuers call it swim failure, and it runs on its own clock, a second countdown nobody warns you about. Elite freedivers face the same cold water and mostly don't gasp. Years of graded, deliberately uncomfortable exposure blunt the reflex until they can control that first breath instead of losing it entirely. None of that transfers to an ordinary swimmer falling off a boat unannounced on an ordinary afternoon. The response is defeated by repetition, not by willpower or nerve, and one deep breath taken beforehand does nothing to prepare an untrained body for it. Panic doesn't cause this collapse. Physiology does every time. Most cold water drowning deaths aren't in open ocean, miles from help. Reviewers keep finding the same pattern: people going under within a few meters of a ladder, a dock, a boat somebody could have reached in seconds if their arms had still been working. That detail is what convinced lifeguards the real danger isn't distance from shore at all. It's those first 10 minutes after the jump, long before anyone is cold enough for hypothermia to even enter the picture. People confuse this with hypothermia, and that mix-up used to guide rescue training. Hypothermia works slowly. It can take a long while to shut a swimmer down. Cold shock does its damage in the opening minute, before the water has cooled your core at all. Lifeguard manuals built for the slow threat missed the fast one entirely. So which do you think actually kills faster, the slow freeze everyone fears, or the first 60 seconds nobody trains for? None of it asks how fit you are or how many years you've spent in a pool. It's a coincidence of wiring, two systems built to protect you, firing at once, in the 1 minute you never trained for.